And hello once again, everyone. Welcome back to Speed Reign Supreme for episode number 2. I'm Alex Gray along with Michael Klein as always, and today we have a guest from the world of drag racing. We have Mr. Travis Schumake joining us today. Travis, thank you so much for joining us, and why don't you introduce yourself and what got you into racing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on today. Travis Schumake. I drive a top fuel dragster in the NHRA, which is kind of our top. And I don't know, listeners, what you know, what you don't know. So top fuel, I drive a 335 mile an hour, 24-foot long, 12,000 horsepower beast down a quarter mile racetrack. We actually race 1,000 feet, a little bit shorter. I grew up around the sport of drag racing. My dad, Trip Shumake, was a funny car driver throughout the 70s and 80s. And my plan in life was to be a nitro funny car driver. And unfortunately, he passed away when I was a teenager. So kind of got away from the sport. And about 3 years ago, decided to kind of put together a business model and a plan on how I could, because you can't really hobby race in Top Fuel. You got to really go for it. So how are we going to fund and sponsor owning semi trucks and pay for nitro? And that was 3 years ago. Actually, I made my top alcohol dragster, which is our kind of our Xfinity Cup, if you will, debut 2 years ago yesterday. And now I'm in this is my first season in Top Fuel.
Yeah, it's just astounding to me how quickly you were able to go up through the ranks from, running some of the smaller stuff up to top fuel, the upper echelon of NHRA drag racing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it certainly isn't by skill, I like to say. I mean, I think, again, if drag racing was something like, it is certainly a physical talent and it is mental talent, and it takes, a lot of effort, focus, and laps. I need a ton more laps in this dragster. But I just spent a lot of time behind my computer figuring out how we're going to pay for it and hawking deals and sponsorships. And often, sadly, and as you guys know in motorsports, it's he who has the most money gets the seat. And so every time I turn on the Top Fuel Dragster, we spend between twelve to $15,000. And so you just gotta spend the majority of your time running a business, and then as the bonus, every 3 times this fall, I'll get to go 300 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's something that my dad talks about a lot because, he follows drag racing way more closely than I have. That's actually where I get all my knowledge from with drag racing is through my dad. And, when he talks about how much it costs to run that, if it's accurate, what he's telling me, it just astounds me. Because, I mean, you say $15,000 for a 3 second run down the drag strip. That's how much it costs to run on the cheap end in ARCA for a full race. And so that's just astounding to me, like how much all this costs.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there's always the different tiers of things, right? But a top fuel team will spend anywhere between $80 and $120,000 a race, and on average, a team that's competing on the full circuit is spending about $3.2 million is kind of the low end of the budget. Several teams are in the $5 million range annually, and that over 20 races obviously breaks down to more like $200,000 a weekend when you amateurize it out. So that's crazy, right? I was just drinking White Claws in the grandstand, and now I got to figure out how to do all this.
Yeah, I think it's incredible with the journey that you've had in the last few years. And obviously, I was kind of, learning more and just looking at your website, and it said at 35, while quarantined in his New York City apartment, you put pen to paper on fulfilling a childhood dream. And I have to say, that's just an incredible story that, in a short amount of time, here you are racing in the top field dragsters in NHRA.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I guess going back to kind of that being quarantined in my apartment, I was working my full-time job, and for some reason, and I don't know if it's like being an elder millennial, I do a lot of my like thought clouding or brainstorming, whatever the kids are calling it now, in PowerPoint. And I just one day opened a new PowerPoint blank deck, and it was like how to get to the path to getting my top alcohol funny car license. So you can actually go online to frankhollydragracing.school.com, and for $6,000, you can drive a top alcohol funny car. But before that, you have to have another series of licenses. So I was like, all right, what's the math on this? Like, I got to find 10 grand. I got to like tap into my 4. What do I got to do to drive a funny car? And it started with just a PowerPoint that was like, all right, so I know that it's 6 grand. cool, what's next? So I always say my advice to people is just write stuff down. And I did, instead of updating that slide, I just add another one. I think at one point I had like 170 slide 1990s style PowerPoint of how to become a race car driver that I was guiding myself through.
That's really cool.
I wish I
Yeah,
applied
so
those.
you talk about wanting to go. Sorry.
You're good. I was just gonna say, I wish I applied that same model to my finances. I wish I kept that back. I just officially got a full-time accountant to run this bills behind the scenes stuff of racing.
Yeah, so you talk about wanting to go nitro funny car racing. So what kind of led to you actually going down the top fuel path?
A crash. I used to be very timid about this topic and be like, how am I going to wordsmith my way out of this one? I wrecked a funny car at 300 miles an hour into a wall during testing in the fall of 2021. And it not only scared me a little bit because I was doing everything I could to not hit that wall, and the car hit that wall, but also kind of put a different lens on the way people were looking at me and my meteoric rise into the sport. Right. It was like everything was going my way. And it's like, how can this really be happening? Literally in March, I was in the stands, and by October, I was racing a nitro funny car. It's 308. Actually, my top speed still in sport is in funny car. And so I think when I hit that wall, I was like, okay, this is too good to be true. You're right. And so I took a step back to top alcohol dragster because that's the category in the NHRA where you can rent a ride. There are several great high quality race cars in top alcohol dragster that you can show up with a check and race a race and learn a ton of stuff and be out there and be competitive. And it's really, the only category you can do that. And so I decided to take a season to do that in 2022, which then led to Top Fuel. So I guess that path, that next chapter was at the end of the 2022 season. A lot of people want to drive for the team I was renting my seat from. And so I actually was going to end up with less races in 23 than in 22. And that's not good for trying to build a brand and build a storyline. And so the best opportunity was to build my own car. So plot twist, I'm not sure if we are aware, maybe just by the tone of my voice, but I'm the kind of the openly gay driver in drag racing. I'm also the tallest. So you can't, if there was the one car I could rent, I fit in, and it's booked. So it's either like it wasn't like I could pay more to race more races. It's one race car that fits a 6 foot, almost 5 guy, 200 pounds, 6'5", takes a special car. So I had to buy a top fuel. I was going to buy one, might as well buy a top fuel dragster. That was the plan that we built about a year ago.
Wow, that's very interesting.
None of it's like
none of
it is like how you should normally do it. Like, okay, wait, so you crashed one, and then you found your niche. You knew where you were going to go, but then you couldn't drive that one anymore. Oh, but you're too tall, so you had to get a custom one. Like, if I'm going to build a custom car, I might as well build the fastest one. I'm not going to build a minor league car for the same cost.
Right. Hey, I mean, it's interesting too. You mentioned how it takes like that one crash. That almost feels like, kind of like, welcome to the world kind of ordeal, kind of like, bam, this is kind of like what's part of the whole thing. And, I have to ask too, what makes, because I love talking about like what makes motorsports so unique and so special. What makes drag racing stand out? What's so unique about it? And how would you convince a potential new fan to come out and check this out?
Yeah, well, there's two things I'd say that stand out. I mean, drag racing is by far the most visceral experience in motorsports. So if you're like, or when people tell me like, oh, it's crazy at NASCAR, like I have to wear earplugs and there's like stuff on my face. I'm like, well, there are 24 NASCAR engines in my one engine.
Right.
Your body vibrates a quarter mile away from my car when it's on. That's before I even slam on the gas. And in addition to the tire smoke and the sound, you also have nitromethane burning your nose and your eyes as a fan. And your vision is blurred as your body vibrates and the earth shakes when I slam on the gas. So, and also the intensity of it's just a volatile sport. I mean, things that can go wrong, the amount of crashes and blowing up and, our tiny little brains trying to operate this 12,000 horsepower car in 3 seconds side by side and making split-second decisions. It's amazing to watch. The other is the atmosphere and the experience. Again, if you are an active motorsports fan in another realm, you get it. But most of the people I'm bringing to the track are from a different walk of life, right? I'm bringing in a new clientele, a new sponsor set, and a new fan base, right? I live in Manhattan. I live on Wall Street. My friends are, yeah, big city folk, and they are fascinated by all of this. We're used to it. I mean, I am. I mean, I grew up around it. It's like that people watching the carnival experience, the t-shirt cannon shooting things in the fan stands, the jumbotrons. They're like, this is the craziest, coolest thing ever. How did I not know this exists? And I have to remind them, there are 30 million American drag racing fans. This is not like a cute little side hustle. This is a huge industry. Some of our races have 40,000 fans at them a day. I mean, that's more than the Arizona Diamondbacks game. Like our normal drag race has more people than an MLB game, right? Yeah. We have amazing coverage on Fox Sports. It's like people are like, this is a cute little thing. I'm like, no, you're the weirdo. We're normal. You're the.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it, honestly.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's all good to know because I will actually be attending my first NHRA event here in a few weeks at the U.S. Nationals. So, yeah, that's going to be good to look out for.
Oh, the big go. Yeah. So that's our biggest race of the season. 4 full days of drag racing. It's almost too much drag racing. I sometimes am like, wait, again? We have to, there's more racing? It's too much. But there'll be 22 cars in Top Fuel in my category. So, right, it's a 16 car if you don't understand drag racing. We spend a few days qualifying to get in rank order 1 through 16. If you're below 16, you don't get to race in eliminations. And then it's a single elimination bracket, kind of like the Final Four in basketball, actually identical. We start the morning on Sunday with 16 cars, and by 4 o'clock, there is 1 car left. Yeah, that's what you're going to look forward to. And I'm looking forward to showing you around as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you going to be racing there?
I am not. I'm racing. My final 3 races of the season are Dallas, Las Vegas, and Pomona, which is LA. That's how I'm finishing the year. So I'll be there. I have a couple sponsors coming. Obviously, my race building is there. My race shop's about 2 miles from the track. So I'm going to have people over. It's my first year owning a building in Indy, or leasing a building from Dom Schumacher and kind of Race Car Alley area. So that'll be cool to host people and be a part of the experience and stand on the starting line and answer the question to everybody, why aren't you racing? Because I ain't got no money, honey.
But hey, one step at a time, we'll get there, right?
Right. I made some poor choices earlier this year by overextending myself to try to race when I didn't have a major sponsor. Like Chicago is close to Indianapolis, and I need to stay relevant in the sport. So like, let's just figure it out. And that put me in like a financial deficit. And I also didn't qualify for the race. And everyone said, don't do this. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And, I'm really not doing Indy because I need to play catch up financially from making that poor choice. So I have money in Dallas, Las Vegas, and LA, and we shall race in Dallas, Vegas, and LA.
Sounds good. Look forward to at least watching you on TV for those.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all kind of just part of the learning curve, too. And you're like, okay, well, that's a little risky. Let's take a step back and figure out what we need to do next, kind of thing.
Yep. And it's not just, the not doing well or the car performance. It's like semi trucks. And certain states, you have to register insurance. And like, it's not as easy as I thought. Like, well, I own the race car. I own the trailer. I have extra tires and I know how much nitro costs. Let's go racing. You don't think about 3 meals a day for every person, transportation for all of them back and forth. Like, oh, so-and-so's at the airport. I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, shoot. What, do I put them in a Lyft? Wait, do I have to pay for the Lyft? Oh, man. It just all adds up. But yeah, the semi-truck alone, I mean, I have to start knowing every race, I'm going to spend like $4,000 on that semi-truck. It wasn't just the cost of purchase. It's just the cost of operating a race car trailer is a lot.
Yeah, and it just shows to people, too, because I know some people will argue that, you're just getting in the car and driving. There's just so much to it. From the aspect of the finances and, of course, from the driver's seat in general. There's so much going on that, people who are not as familiar with racing don't quite get. And then suddenly they sit there and see what's going on and then they go, oh, wow, there's actually so much that goes into it. Because I love talking to people at my workplace, and they ask me like, hey, what do they do if this happens, or what? And I try to explain the best I can and say like, oh yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into it.
That's one of the things when we talk about kind of just me needing more experience. You learn that you can't practice it until it happens. I have tried to go through scenarios in my head like, okay, so I'm going to hit the wall and a dragster and it's going to tip over on its side. And how am I going to get out in that situation? And you're like, stop practicing for this. You're just going to have to figure that out because who knows what side it's going to tip on. Like you're going to have to go through a crash, which I've done in the funny car. So mentally and emotionally, I've ripped that Band-Aid, but the car is not going to back up from a burnout, which happens to everyone. I think I'm now like 52 passes in. I have not had it happen. At some point, I'm going to do a burnout and the car will not go in reverse. And I have like a very limited amount of time to turn that car off, get out of the car and get over the wall as to not mess up my competitor's run. Like, but you can't practice that. So you just got to know like, okay, wait, is that the sound of the car? Okay, we're not in reverse. Make the decision. 2 switches here, 1 belt here, this pump off, get out of the car. Like, yeah, you need that lived experience that I'm lacking, that I'm eager to continue to grow. No parachutes. You're going to get at some point, I'm going to hit the finish line at 335 miles an hour, and the car's not going to slow down because the parachutes aren't going to deploy. How am I preparing myself for that on every run, right? So the first thing I do after I hit the parachutes is grab a big old handful of brake. We use a hand brake in the dragster, and then as soon as I feel the parachutes, I can relax. A lot of our tracks are super long. I don't even need the brake, but it's my hand as tight as it can on that brake for the moment that I have now, 1,000 feet to use that brake to slow this car down. Yeah, all sorts of funny scenarios that when people say it must be easy, you point straight. My front tires are rarely both on the ground at the same time. And the centrifugal force of the clutch is causing the car to move in and out of the groove, which is kind of our center 8 feet of the 30-foot track from side to side. Like, yeah, I do not aim straight. Check out my onboard cameras where it looks like I'm using disco stick or like glow sticks at a rave. It's how it looks like I'm driving this straight quote unquote dragster.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing just hearing all that. I'm really impressed by all that because I've seen, drag racing on TV and stuff like that over the years. And, it amazes me how much, like, there's just so much that goes into it. And in all honesty, you said it, those things go up to 300 miles an hour in 5 seconds. And it always amazes me, like, man, I could not see myself doing that. That is insane, but it's still really cool at the same time. And not to mention, it seems like you're helping bring in a new crowd of people into drag racing as well.
Yeah, I've always said there's 2 things behind this. One, race cars, traditional motorsport sponsors aren't ready for me. And they are not ready to lose or disenfranchise their fan base by controversially sponsoring a LGBTQ race car driver. So one, it's not like anybody's knocking on my door. And 2, like there's no reason to cannibalize the money. And like watching from this sport from the outside, it's like just watching the Valvoline logo hop around race cars. Like, bitch, go get your own oil. Go knock on someone else's door. And I just made a commitment to myself and to my team colleagues. I mean, we do all use similar oil, but like Redline Oil is one of my major partners, and a huge supporter and advocate of mine. But yeah, let's go find. When it comes to like, I do need some oil and some tools. Like we can all have the same sponsors for that, but yeah, we don't need Papa John's car, and then you steal my Papa John's car, and like. I'm going to go find some cool new money. And everyone I talk to is like, wait, what? What's a race car? I'm like, I know, Kim, I'll show you. And then you're going to pay for it. Lots of it.
Yeah, and something else that obviously I think we want to touch on is that you are currently the only openly gay LGBTQ driver in NHRA, one of the few in major American motorsports, and a lot of people may not know this, but I grew connected with you through Racing Pride, and so I'm just curious, like, what has your journey kind of been like with that? If you're okay with sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's ever evolving. I think even my answer now is going to be probably different than it was 2 months ago versus 2 years ago. I often put that LGBTQ hat on as needed. I have 2 sponsorship decks. One is like gay, 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 and one is like, nope, not gay at all. You don't even know. You would never know I'm gay unless I spoke, obviously. But trying to find that balance, right? Am I Travis, the gay race car driver, or am I the race car driver who happens to be gay? And I think that I want to be the race car driver who happens to be gay, but I'm not going to get to that point when we're talking about $3 million a year unless I am the gay race car driver, right? I have to sell. It sounds like I'm selling out, but like my shtick is that I'm tall, my dad is dead, and I'm the gay guy. Like, you have to look at what your storyline is, because there is a whole bunch of 38-year-old white guys in drag racing, and everyone's looking for the same sponsor. What differentiates you? I want it to be that I win, that I'm outspoken, that I'm somewhat controversial, right? I cannot wait to get my first fist fight. I don't fuck around with anybody. Like, you do not want to cross me. I am a mean Real Housewife of New York City. The words that will come out of my mouth on national television, don't worry about me. I'll get a following when it's time. But right now, Grindr is a sponsor, and Grindr has money, and Grindr is not going to sponsor anyone else in Top Fuel. So yeah, I'm going to play the gay card. But the more I'm around the sport, so I think this is part of the answer that is evolving, is that like it doesn't actually matter when I'm at the racetrack. I have been embraced. I think change takes time. I love to say that is I've been embraced by the sport, by my peers, by their sponsors, by the crew members, and we're getting closer on the fans. I will say I'm not the most popular driver with the fans. Like I get booed and flipped off and F you faggot as I return up the return road at the racetrack. But everyone else, it doesn't, not that I used to say that they see that I'm good for business. They actually like me. They're like my friends. I used to say like, I hope I break into the drag racing family. I go here now. I'm a part of the drag racing family. I'm everybody's cool gay uncle. And that kind of storyline has ended. Like, will I be accepted in conservative motorsports? I have been. I go here now. It's actually making me more conservative. Oftentimes in dinner in New York City, I'm the one saying like mildly Trumpy things, and people are like, "Wait, what did you just say?" I'm like, "Well, I have different. There's another side to that story. I mean, I'm growing just as much as the drag racing fans are growing by being in a different side of the world."
Yeah, and I think this also shows that racing's for anybody. Anybody can enjoy this, and I think what you're doing is absolutely great. And I think it could also open up a whole new audience to come in and see this, and of course, cheer for you as well.
Yeah, I want, like, we own the LGBTQ community, right? We're a huge contributor to the automotive space. Gay men have really nice cars. Lesbians have really nice trucks. And I just love that I oversimplified that. But there seems to be that barrier of like, well, I don't watch them perform at high speeds because it's obviously a space I'm not welcome in. So by normalizing my presence in this space, right? Every race, I'd say there's a dozen more LGBTQ fans in the stands, which is adding up more and more. That's having a social and financial impact on everyone's lives. So we should be allowed to drive fast cars, and the fans should be able to watch them and see themselves in those fast cars.
Absolutely. And, that's something that I feel like a lot of people have struggled with, and it's starting to kind of become much more commonplace. And so we're just going to start seeing some more LGBTQ plus fans who are, embracing the sport. And hopefully we start to see the sport embrace the LGBTQ plus community even more as time goes on. And like you said, change takes time, but I look forward to seeing, where we are 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road.
Yeah. I don't know that I'm going to be the LGBTQ driver who wins the first big race, but I hopefully had a part in being the reason that someone felt comfortable being that person eventually. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like Stephen Rhodes, I don't know who
absolutely.
he is, but I know who he is. Like, right? I mean, to me, as a gay race car driver, I knew who Stephen Rhodes was when I was a teen. Actually, we're the same age, which is weird. I'm always like, I wonder how he's doing. I'm like, wait, are we the same age? Yeah, like you know who he is, and you feel comfortable knowing that, like, okay, that happened. He did something, and I hope that I play a part in someone else's story in that capacity. The other thing I would say is that it's not just about LGBTQ individuals; it's also about the allies, right? Like people I have met at the racetrack, specifically in Phoenix. A family came up to me, and they came to the races because their daughter was trans, but it was the parents' decision to come to the races. It was that they felt comfortable, like, oh, okay, like we love racing and we want to come to the racetrack. And now this is like this crossover with our kid and you. I'm like, well, not really, but I like that reach. So yeah, I think that it's same with on the sponsorship side. A lot of the key decision makers that are are my allies and are fighting for me have an LGBTQ son or a daughter, right? They are a C-suite executive who supports the community but is not in the community.
Yeah, and I think it's all really cool, and obviously it's you mentioned Stephen Rhodes, of course, and it reminded me too, being at Daytona, uh, they've had this mobile. It's like a mobile museum, Michael. It was kind of celebrating inclusive, being inclusive in the sport and all the different people that have come and gone, and it just made me think of that.
It's got Devin, it's got not Devin, that's rude. It's got Zach Heron on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember I first saw him attempt the ARCA race at Daytona last year, I believe.
But those things stand out, and I think this is just a great example, right? I'm in another sport, another league. I guess I occasionally speak with other LGBTQ drivers, but I know that it's a big deal that Zach Heron is on that traveling history museum wall thing. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I something that also made me laugh on the website. I just thought it was really cool. Is that don't tell him we told you, but at 319 miles an hour, he's also the fastest gay on Earth. That was cool.
People are like, well, I'm like, no, I mean, again, it's not my statistic, but I don't mind fighting you about it. Like airplanes land and take off substantially slower than that. No one has been out and openly gay in land speed racing on like the Bonneville slot flats, which as soon as someone is, by all means, they will double my speed. But in any sort of sanctioned motorsport, which the top speed machine in sanctioned motorsports is the one I drive, I can tell you I'm the only one who likes boys or a girl who likes girls and is open about it or has ever been open about it in history. So it's fairly undisputable unless I'm missing something, which again, it's silly. It's a silly fact, but it's substantially faster than other drivers.
Yeah,
I broke a bunch of my ribs going that fast. I deserve the credit.
There you go. And hey, as long as you're happy, that's what matters in the
Right.
end.
I've been, and again, this is a tangent. This is off the rails now, but there are other drivers in my sport, not necessarily in my category. NHRA has 14 categories, 200 different classification of cars, over 70,000 licensed drivers. It's so many people. But there are other LGBTQ drivers that are coming up the ranks, and some that are very much out. Michael Hondras in Super Comp and Super Gas has been winning and is gay as a $3 bill. Is that the phrase? And he's one of my great friends. He's very masculine presenting, but everyone knows Michael's gay. He's just not on national television in my category. And then there are others who are closer to my category that are in the process of coming out. And I'm like, you need to stay in that closet till I win a race. Don't steal my gun. I'm planning to come out. I'm like, 2026 looks great for that for you. I see your.
Just 2 more years.
Give me 2 more years to try to do something.
Just let me have this opportunity, please.
I'll give you my card. Just let me win.
Please let Travis have this. Please.
Please.
So yeah, and I guess that also transitioned into my future plans. I love the business side. I do want to win a race. I do want to be competitive in this sport as long as I feel like I want to be competitive in this sport. But also, if there is a more lucrative and interesting and skilled driver to drive, right now I'm an asset owner. I own a business. If someone else is going to bring money and do better, by all means, I will sit on the starting line in a cute polo and own this race team. And so I do think that my career in this sport, I think there's certainly a time limit on it. Not by age by any means, but like, I know I'm not doing this the rest of my life, but I do want to see this sport grow, and business side's fun. So I'll get out of the car soon enough after I win that race or 2.
Or many. You never know.
I thought I was in very good contention for NHRA Rookie of the Year this year, and then Tony freaking Stewart decided to join Top Fuel.
Oh, that's tough competition, isn't it?
It was like me and maybe Ida. There's a new Top Fuel driver who's her first race of the year is this race, and she'll finish the last 8. And then my friend Jasmine Salinas might have done a couple races. Well, Jasmine's dad decided to step out of the car, so she's raced the whole season. And Tony Stewart decided to move to Top Fuel, and Ida's about to blow everyone away. I'm going to finish like 7th in the Rookie of the Year votes, which is fine. But dang it, Tony Stewart.
Dang it, Tony. Yeah, that's got to be crazy too. Just one more thing to add. Just racing with a guy like Tony, who's kind of done it all. He's had his success in open wheel and NASCAR, and now here he is in drag racing.
It is weird. I think Tony's a great example, but for me as a lifelong drag racing fan, that these people are my peers and are my friends. And like, I ride with them to the airport, or we drink in the lobby bar, or I was missing a piece of my, I needed a support for my wheelie bar. And I was like, just walked over and I'm talking to Brittany Force and Steve Torrance asking for parts. And this is wild. And I'm at the PRI show in Indianapolis, and like Tony Stewart came up to me. It was like, how's it going? And I'm like, wait, you're just seeking me out right now? What's happening? You're Tony Stewart. Are we friends? What's happening? I don't know. So those are the things when you're like depressed about being overdrafted and maybe filing for bankruptcy, you're like, but Tony Stewart does know who I am. So I guess it's all okay.
Yeah. But yeah, well, this has certainly been a really fun discussion to have, and getting to learn more about the world of drag racing and what you do and your backstory. I think it's great. I'm definitely wishing you best of luck, and I hope everything works out for you, man.
Thanks, guys. And yeah, everyone, come to the drag races. It's an amazing experience. Stop by. I'll give you a Diet Coke in my pit. Anything you need, because at the drag races, every ticket is a pit pass. You can walk right up and touch my car. I prefer that you don't, but it's extremely accessible. So I hope more people check it out.
Yeah, and I've never been to a drag race before, but I certainly want to check one out here at some point. Obviously, there's Indy. I got family in St. Louis, and I know Gateway has one as well. So absolutely one of these days I'd like to check it out and come say hi and get a Diet Coke.
Cool. And by that I mean alcohol, but I can't say that.
Oh, well.
Whoops.
Walked into that trap.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for joining
thank you
us.
so much for coming on.
Yeah.
With that, that'll do it for another edition of Speed Rain Supreme. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. From Travis Schumake, Michael Klein, and myself, Alex Gray. We'll see you next time.